basis. She did want people to know she really has nothing to do with the voting portion of that. That's left up to the committee and everything, and so that's how those people are determined. But I would like to suggest that all of the people that have been previous Toledo Brick Award winners come up after dinner, so that while she's taking names, we can get a picture of everybody real quick and kind of move on, because we like to do that for historical purposes on a go-forward basis, because Joe's going to handle that for us. And we're trying to make it easy because she does a lot of things for us, not only being a vendor, but her and Harry, of course, are key instruments of this. And they're both Toledo Brick recipients, too. So, the next person really needs no introduction. Most of you may not have shook hands with him or met his wife, but you've probably talked to him on the phone or possibly bought parts from him. He's one of our vendors. He has spoke at our events before. Always entertaining, always wonderful, Paul Berry. This is the man that's been doing this for over 40 years, and he's only 51 now? 48. Yeah. And, but from A to Z, I've mentioned his name before, but he does all of it. He does the restorations from beginning to end. He's got a number of beautiful pictures and different books and things over the years, magazines, TV spots, just all kinds of different things. And I hear at some point, as life allows it, we'll get another book out, right? But you're working on a book. But the first thing I knew about Jeeps 25, 30 years ago when I started on doing restoration work was I opened one of these books and some of Paul's work was in there, and it was just fabulous. To this day, the high standards there. It will always be there. And but you can get your parts from him. If you've got a family heirloom that you want restored, he's the only guy I suggest you go to get it done, because he's done a number of them, and a true professional knows how to get you through that. So, without further ado, Paul Berry.
Thank you, Dennis, for the kind words. I'm really not 48.
No.
39?
I'm 39, yes. And it's great to be here to get out of the California sunshine. It was really, that degree of heat was really killing me. So I'm glad to be here to have a little bit of something wet. Tonight's presentation is just barely going to scratch the surface on a collection of photographs of odd and unusual Willys vehicles used in all forms of public service and private industry. And I hope you'll find this as much fun as I had putting it together, and I hope it to be a little entertaining and a little corny, but here we go. And I have to step out of the way for a moment. Does somebody have music to play with this, you know? All right, here we go. There's no dressing mirror back there, so sorry. Well, as it says here, we know from experience, and experience they had. Willys Overland was no stranger to the manufacturing of commercial trucks prior to World War II. In the late 1940s, Willys produced a panel delivery with the 440 drivetrain in two-wheel drive. The photo on the upper right shows 7 delivery trucks, all unpainted, that had been warehoused since the start of the war and were released in 1942 and sold to a delivery company in Memphis, Tennessee. Willys supplied these trucks to the Army as ambulances during World War II. Willys' next offering in the cab-over delivery body was the Urban package delivery. Now, this vehicle was built on the two-wheel drive Jeep pickup chassis. The body was built by Doyle in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and was delivered in primer with gray painted interior. It had a wood floor and wood interior paneling. It was powered by the flathead 4-cylinder motor. And it's kind of curious to look at this picture because you look at the parking lights under the headlights, and they're clearly from the 1940s wagon or CJ2A. But yet the dashboard is 50, 51, 52, 53 station wagon. So they were using parts and pieces left over from here and there. In 1947, Willys introduces into standard production a panel delivery on the two-wheel drive plain R chassis station wagon platform from the late 1946. And they targeted the small business owner of laundromats, bakeries, paint and hardware stores, construction contractors, and countless other trades. The slab sides made for mobile advertising in the business, and the vertical opening rear doors made loading easier, an easier task over the extended reach of the station wagon tailgate. But it wasn't until 1957 that Willys Motors revisited the full-size standing headroom walk-in delivery van body style. The Willys Economy delivery was just that, a two-wheel drive station wagon chassis with a 72 horsepower 4-cylinder F-head motor. Manufactured by the Boyertown Auto Body Works in Pennsylvania, the S6 body seen here is being painted. It was available in either the standard 36-inch wide rear door, as seen in the previous slide, or the 66-inch wide full opening rear door seen here. The lower image is that of the other manufacturer, Montpelier, the Montpelier Urban Delivery. It featured larger windshields than the Boyertown body. Montpelier closed its factory in 1965 and Boyertown in 1990. This is one of two Boyertown Economy deliveries in the Willys America Museum. Only about 200 of these economy deliveries were made from 1957 to 1961. And it's kind of no wonder. It was 4 cylinders. It couldn't get out of its own way. We moved from moving packages and dairy products to transporting people. The cargo personnel carrier was built on the Willys truck chassis and was available with the 4-cylinder F-head or a 226 motor. Now, early versions of the cargo personnel carrier had no doors and had a fold-down windshield similar to that of an M38A1 and a full canvas top with metal bows that inserted into round fixtures borrowed from the Universal CJ models. So it kind of, when the top was on it, it kind of looked like a rolling covered wagon. The wood slat benches ran front to rear and seated 6 very uncomfortable passengers on each side. I found this one, it was being used as an ambulance in a mine in Michigan, they had taken the 4-cylinder motor out of it and put a diesel motor in it because it had to go underground and they, you know, the fire hazard. This mini pumper was built by Oren Fire Apparatus in Roanoke, Virginia. 559 of these vehicles with the 226 cubic inch motor were built, and 472 with the F-134 were built. This modified station wagon carries the flavor of the cargo personnel carrier and was offered for sale on the internet some years ago. I'm sure some big game hunter would enjoy this truck on his next African safari. For your forward control fans, this forward control series of Willys truck lent itself to many different occupations. Aviation, the fire department, farming, snow plowing, and even a proposed big rig tractor trailer was just the kind of forward thinking coming from the engineers at Willys Overland. This most unusual backhoe, FC half cab, was recently restored by its new owner after many years in storage. There's some updated pictures on the internet of it being repainted. I think it's yellow now. The Ottawa backhoe could be either factory or dealer installed at the company's facilities in Ottawa, Kansas, Bowling Green, Ohio, or Glendale, California. We will see more forward controls later in this presentation. And now the music, please. Willys was on the right track when it equipped the U.S. Army with high rail gear during World War II. The lower picture shows a motor pool field conversion using 2.5-ton GMC split rims to keep this slat grill on track. Fairmont Motors of Fairmont, Minnesota has been building maintenance of way equipment for the railroad since 1909. You may recognize these speeders here on their production line. The speeders carried 2 men with limited equipment for track inspections and were powered by a 2-cylinder air-cooled motor. But the need for a larger vehicle, more manpower, and equipment brought Willys into this specialized market. So Willys teamed up with Fairmont to assemble high rail vehicles on the Willys wagon and truck 4-wheel drive chassis. A Fairmont converted vehicle carried 3 ID plates mounted to the inner fender well or firewall. Here's a train depot in Fairmont. See the water tower for the steam engine? That's where I gotta do it. And here's a section of the track at the plant. This is a current picture. Here's a plant in '09, and they had a large smokestack just like the Willys plant. Their smokestack's quicker than your smokestack. This is a shot of the factory floor in 2009 and a couple of speeders. In '09, they celebrated 100 years of being in business in Fairmont, Minnesota. They were the largest employer in that town, and they made maintenance of way vehicles of all sorts, not just speeders and high rails, but huge cranes and that sort of thing for the railroad. This CJ3A with underinflated balloon tires and a canvas half cab with pickup truck rear fenders to cover the tires was photographed in 1957. And this is the cover of the manual for the 4-door 1949-1950 4x4 wagon as it prepares to leave the tracks for the highway. And here again on the highway with 3 passengers. This is a Fairmont factory photo with the side doors open, and the badge you see on the hood says Fairmont High Rail Motor Car. This is our 1950 Fairmont High Rail on display at our museum. Here's an engineer at Fairmont. He test drives a 1951 4-door wagon. And that same 1951 wagon with its side doors open. We'll take and look at the sides of this thing. Kind of a detail, but I'm going to bring it up later. With the door closed. I had a pointer, but Look at the side detail here where they cut the door, they capped the quarter panel, and they did a really nice job doing this, although it was a very crude conversion. But later on I'm going to bring that little detail up again. Not all Fairmonts were four-wheel drive. All of these in these pictures are actually all two-wheel drive. Four-wheel drive trucks were the first to be converted to high rail equipment. They had a longer frame, heavier load capacity, and an introduction almost 2 years before the 4x4 station wagon. These 51 trucks had the less drafty, fully enclosed crew cabin. The 57 truck in the corner has a new style rail gear on it. The Armed Forces had contracts for many of these high rail vehicles. This earlier model had the roll-up side curtain. Here's another one that's a roll-up side curtain, hydraulic landing gear, 1951. Not all of them had crew boxes, many of them just had a pickup bed, and the spare tires moved to the opposite side for improved rearward visibility, because you just never know when a train might sneak up behind you. A couple other examples of trucks. The one in the advertisement has its spare tire moved, the other one doesn't, and they've made a ton of these things. I'm surprised. I went through the archives and I scanned every bit of the photography that they had in it. It took 2 days to do it, and they built a lot more than you can imagine. The 1957 Fairmont, this one here, saw service with the Delaware and Hudson Railroad. I traveled to upstate New York with my wife some years back, and we brought it back and put it in the museum. And here's the identical truck to mine in a period photograph. They had several of these. They were all painted the same. They all had the same cap and a cabin on the back of them. Here, a Fairmont engineer demonstrates the ease of lowering the high rail gear onto the track. And then, of course, you had to get out and do the front. You had to get out and do the back. And this early 1950s truck has a special aerial ladder device on the top of the crew cabin to service overhead wires. I wonder who drew the short straw to get up on the top of that thing. I'm sure it's all OSHA approved. And again, for you, Denny, here's Ford Control jumps into high rail duty. Note again the spare tire location. You know, I really wonder what a train with a full head of steam looks like in the rear view mirror of your Jeep.
Gary, the end is near.
Not only did they do 170s, they did 150s. And I'm not quite sure what this roofless and doorless FC was designed for and used by this USMC private, but it kind of has the feeling of one of those Burma Jeep weapons carriers and meeting a farm steak truck bed, you know? This shows the various controls for the steering locks on a 47, a 49, and a 51. So when you put this vehicle on the tracks, you lower the landing gear, and then you put the steering wheel in position, and the handle that you see over on the one side locks the steering wheel in place. There is no steering. The high rail gear does the steering for you. It's kind of like one of those rides at Disneyland. Here again in that one picture shows the controls. You notice how those dashboard handles look like little railroad wheels? The front hydraulic cylinders, the rear cylinder on the pickup truck chassis, and the hydraulic pump and valving underneath the hood. And for the J-Series Wagoneer fans, here's two different Wagoneers from the mid to late 60s, maybe early 70s, on the Fairmont test tracks. This was offered on the internet for sale. This is one of Great Northern Railway's four-door wagons. I recently discovered that I actually had the original factory photo of that wagon. Now, not all four-door wagons saw rail service. President Lyndon Johnson had one on his ranch in Texas. I talked to the owner of it a number of times. And several others were special ordered for customers. However, like all the special-bodied Willys vehicles, very few survive today. And earlier I pointed out a little detail in the side of the body of where that door fit into the quarter panel. So that earlier one, they had capped it there, but these later ones in the 60s, they just made the cut and didn't bother finishing the detail, and let's just get it out. Same vehicle, opposite side. This East Coast four-door was used to plow snow around upstate New York. And they made three doors. This one was discovered, this was somewhere in, I believe, Oklahoma now, I'm not quite sure. But take a look at the hinge point of that third door. It swings out suicide style. And this was one of Henry J. Kaiser's airport transporters. Look at, it's got three large skylights on the roof. He had a hotel in Hawaii, and he had one there. And this one was here in the States. And it's time for that music again.
You gotta have a dog up there.
Yeah, it was a Dodge truck, but you know, it's all about entertainment. Come on. Hey, so Willys made fire engines going way back. This is a 1916 Overland from Granville, Michigan. And this is a 1924 Willys 9. This picture is dated February 26, 1945. Look at the directional tires. But how does the driver and the passenger get in and out? I'll bet they figured that out quickly, because those hard suctions had to get moved up top. Here's a demonstration of the usefulness of the MB fire Jeep in December of 1943. The Jeep fire truck, powered by the war-approved Jeep engine. Now here is a reunion attendee many times over in the Jeff City, Art Gloss. This is 1945 CJ2A. It had column shift. It's got them little square plates on the windshield frame. Very neat vehicle. This fire engine conversion was done by Boyer Fire Apparatus. And you can recognize a Boyer because it has that kind of an S-curved shape in the front bumper. And this is 1948. How? How do I know? Well, its front bumper was a simple single curve. The most popular fire engine manufacturers using the Willys chassis were Howe and Boyer, and then followed up by Darley and Oren. Now here's a couple early trucks. The top one is a Darley conversion. The pumps were driven off the front of the crankshaft. The top photo shows a factory photo of a 3A pulling a tank trailer with a booster hose reel. And I wonder about this rear spring load with a tank full of water and two fully geared firemen standing on the tailboard of this 2A in the illustration below. Another great old factory photograph of, well, you can't see that on the screen, but who's that? That's Darley. 3B on factory photograph. And not all of them pumped water. This one had a dry chem Ansel system on the back of it. San Francisco Airport Fire Department had a 3B, and it had a couple of CO2 extinguishers mounted behind the half cab. Myself and Christy Rora, we were at the Chrysler Museum during a Midwest reunion. This was 7 years ago. Jim Rora and I were playing fireman with his 3B in the back lot of the hotel at that same reunion. And they made them up into CJ5s. M38A1s, they had a conversion for the fire service. And an M38 and an M38A1 brush breakers. And even present-day Wranglers as pumpers and fire patrol vehicles in current production. The Mitsubishi version of the 3B, outfitted by the same company that outfitted Toyota Land Cruisers in Japan as firefighting engines. The trailer that was, it was a spin trailer that went behind the 2A, 3A, 5 fire engine. It carried, I think, 300 gallons of water and 8 pounds per gallon. That's a pretty heavy trailer, along with a booster hose reel. And then we come with the truck, and this was the Commando fire truck. This came out in 1956. General Fire Equipment, Howe made these. They made several conversions to the Willys pickup. The cab and the hose bed were one unit, and the wheels were split rims to handle the added load carrying capacity. One of our museum fire engines, an early Willys factory demonstrator, saw service with the Michiana Shores Volunteer Fire Department after it was decommissioned by the Willys factory. Many of the national parks had Willys Commando trucks. Most of them were built by Howe. All three of these are Darleys. This 55 brush truck had backpack pump cans on the back. And again, the mighty FC finds its way into another public service. And I believe the top one is owned by Andy Harvey, who's brought it out to a Midwest reunion before. And this is a 150, 2 hose reels with 200 feet of booster line on each one of those reels. And this one, well, I just don't know what it is, but it's in some foreign country, and I found it on the internet, and I just found it fascinating and had to throw it in there for whatever reason. So the top one is an airport rig, and it has a midship pump. The bottom one is one acquired by Rudy Phillips, and look at those long 2.5-inch suctions. The top one it's faded, this one here, that's a Valley. Valley was out in Michigan, and they made quite a few conversions of pickup trucks and forward controls. And the one on the bottom is one of ours. It's a DRW with a 3-speed, a front mount pump, and a dry chem Ansel system behind the cab. Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. This truck originally saw service in Greenland at Air Force Base. It now lives in Sonoma County.